Hey everybody, this is your boy Joe, the Wealth Architect, and today I want to talk about mindset, right? You can't talk about money, personal finance, or anything of that nature without talking about mindset, because you can have all the money in the world, all the little amount of money in the world, and if you don't have the right mindset, then chances are you will part with your money, right? You will spend it, you will waste it. And so I want to talk about the difference between having a consumer mindset and an ownership mindset. A consumer mindset and an ownership mindset. We live in a society, a capitalist society in America, that is focused on consumerism, debt, buying, spending, owing, consuming. And that has been ingrained in us, right? Since childhood. It's about buying. Very few of us grew up in a household or community that focused on owning things. And so we're not at fault for thinking like a consumer and having a consumer mindset. And what does that mean? What does having a consumer mindset mean? Well, basically, what I'm talking about is we think about, just a little loud out here, we think about things that we can buy, obviously, things that we can purchase, whether it's a home, whether it's clothes, sneakers, food, whatever it may be. But we think of it as if it is natural, like it's a natural way of being. And it is not natural, right? It is basically a product of a capitalist society, because you have owners and consumers. So that if owners of businesses, of companies, producers of products and services, if they didn't have consumers, then they'd go out of business, right? So that's why we have marketing. That's why you have advertising agencies, right? If it was natural for us to spend, then we wouldn't need companies to encourage us, to make us feel guilty, to make us feel bad about ourselves, feel inadequate, if it was natural for us to be consumers. So it's not natural in that way. And yet here we are. And so what I urge you to do is to really stop right now and think about to what degree you think like a consumer and to what degree you think like an owner. By an owner doesn't mean you have to own a business, doesn't mean that you have to own a home, right? All those things are all well and good. But you need to think about having some type of ownership stake in your personal finance, world or reality, right? So for me, it's a couple things, owning my own business, of course, Mindful Money, LLC, but it's also about owning shares of companies, right? Owning a stake in the U.S. economy, right? And in other economies, right? To be honest, I haven't branched out so much into international waters, something I will do. To be honest, the U.S. is, I think, economically and definitely politically, some people may disagree, but politically on the decline, right? So it is important to diversify and to buy or invest in other parts of the world, right? There are so many other opportunities that exist beyond U.S. shores. But I digress for a minute. The main point is that we really need to think about to what degree we have a consumer mindset where we are always acquisitive, acquiring things, right? Buying X number of sneakers and just stacking things up, buying the latest iPhone. Like, what does that really do? How is that really serving us, right? I mean, it's not, right? But it's like we have this kind of like a tape recorder, right? This self-talk that says that we need to be buying stuff, right? That we go to school to get a job, to buy stuff, right? To spend, right? The school system does not teach us much or anything about owning, about being an owner, right? But it's the owners who run the world, including the country, right? Meaning that it's the owners who pay for the lobbyists who then get the politicians that we vote for. It is the owners, the capitalist owners, who actually have the sway here, right? Who have the influence, who have the power. And so we need to become owners, not necessarily to influence politics, but at a minimum to own our own financial destinies. And that's what I'm really getting at, right? Kind of meandering here, but what I'm getting at is that we need to have an ownership mindset, right? If we are going to be financially free or not struggling, right? Some people may say, well, I don't want to be rich, right? You don't have to be rich to be financially free, right? You don't want to have a lot of debt, or you don't want to not have money to live off of, just on a day-to-day basis, or in terms of your basic health care, things like that. We're talking fundamental stuff. So we want to have some degree of financial freedom. That doesn't happen just merely by having a job per se, right? You have to be very intentional, very deliberate, and you need to have an ownership mindset. I cannot emphasize that enough. And so if you want to learn more about having an ownership mindset, then click the link below for chapter 1 of my book, The New SSI Method, where I talk about having a spending plan, a savings plan, and an investing plan. And that 3-part framework, the SSI method, is your blueprint for wealth. It is particularly your blueprint, your economic blueprint after incarceration, right? No one, while in prison or even after prison, has laid out and says, here is how you get from struggle to to doing well, to success, right? Nobody's laying out until now. Now the book has been out for a while, and again, I'll give you the first chapter of The New SSI Method, my second book, for free by just clicking the link below, and you can instantly download chapter 1. But my main point is that we really need to have an economic blueprint. I can't emphasize this enough, right? Just having a job, as I mentioned in a different video, I talked about just having a job is not enough, especially coming out of incarceration. Even with, a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a doctor's degree, all right, some people can eke out some type of existence, meaning, they could, you get a decent paying job, but I know plenty of people who struggle with degrees and can't get a job because of felony conviction. So we need to have our own economic blueprint, our own game plan that we put together and that we act on. It's really that simple, right? I can't emphasize it enough. Again, I'm going to get to the point of ownership mindset versus consumer mindset. A consumer mindset is someone, for example, I'm just giving a basic profile, is someone who might, instead of owning shares of Apple or Samsung or any other smartphone producer, they are in line for the latest phone, right? Someone with an ownership mindset, very simple. Someone with an ownership mindset instead owns shares. My grandson, for example, some years ago, said, "Oh, Grandpa, I want I forgot which phone, but it was an iPhone, but I forgot which edition." And he was like, I want a phone. I said, "Well, I thought you had a phone already." "Yeah, but I want now they have the 12 out or the 10 or whatever model was out at the time." And I said, "Well, is your current phone broke?" And he's like, "No." I said, "So why do you need the new one?" "Well, because it's the new one. It's the new one, And so while I got it on some level, I said, well, I'm going to do something better. I'm not going to get you the phone, but I'm going to get you shares in Apple, right? Because I own an iPhone as well, right? But I said, man, I keep mine for years, like at least every 3 years, then I'll trade up, right? But so I said, I'm going to get you shares. And surprisingly, he was not disappointed because we had been talking about owning shares of stock and how you can receive capital gains, how the value of the shares can go up, as well as dividends, right? I can get a piece of the profits. And so that over time, not only will you have more money in general, but you have more money to buy a phone, right? The phone will pay for itself, right? So, or the investing will pay for the phone. And so that was the point that I was really trying to get across to him. And that's the point here, right? So I have shares, for example, in CVS. I shop at CVS as a consumer, but I also own shares in CVS. I like the company. And same thing for Amazon, right? People may feel differently about it, but I do own shares. I'm a consumer of Amazon, but I also own shares, right? Same thing with Google, right? I consume a lot of YouTube, watch a lot of YouTube. And so it only made sense to me to also own the parent company, Alphabet, who owns Google and YouTube, right? And so my point is, there's nothing wrong with being a consumer, but there is something wrong with having a consumer-only mindset or consumer mindset, period, right? The goal should be to have an ownership mindset, to always look at things through the lens of an owner, right? So when I go in any store, any business operation, whether I own shares in it or not, I always think of it not just as a consumer, but as an owner. Would I want to own this company, right? The way that the store front or department store is, the interior of it, the people, meaning the sales staff, is it a friendly place, or is it an inviting place or not? So I think like an owner all the time now. I mean, it's second nature, and that's what I want for you all, right? To think like an owner. Can't emphasize it enough. It's important to have an ownership mindset, and that could be, again, it could be in terms of investing in stocks and bonds, real estate. It can be investing in terms of companies. It's a whole bunch of different ways to look at it, but to think as someone who is invested in the outcome of not only the companies or entities that they invest in, but their own financial well-being, right? You have to own your financial well-being. It doesn't just happen by happenstance, right? Otherwise, you could think of it like two sides of a ledger. One side is a consumer, the other side is an owner, right? And I'm gonna ask you to really think about which side you fall on, right? If I were to guess, most of you would fall on the consumer side, right? Not that you don't think about being an owner, but maybe you just haven't acted on it. And some of you have not even thought about it. And over time, we want that to change, right? Here on this channel, we want you to think like owners. That's what this is all about. And so, in the comment section, tell me, right, on a scale of, and if we're talking about 100%, out of 100%, what percent would you say that you are a consumer, and what part would you say that you're an owner? What do I mean by that? So are you 70% a consumer, meaning just in general, again, it's no hard and fast number, but let's say, are you 70% of a consumer mindset and 30% of an owner? Are you 90% of consumer and 10% of the mindset, or ownership mindset? Or is it the reverse? Do you think like an owner? Do you own property? Do you own shares? Even whether it's an IRA or through your company 401k, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're an owner, but to what degree do you think like an owner, and to what degree you think like a consumer? So put that in the chat, and I look forward to having a conversation and going deeper on this whole dichotomy of being an owner of your financial destiny, thinking like an owner as opposed to a consumer. So with that said, I'm out. This is your boy Joe, the Wealth Architect, and I will definitely be diving a lot deeper shortly. All right? Take care and y'all have a great day.